I mean, when I first started my business, I actually was invited to speak at a mental health event. And my business coach at the time was like, "What? Do not do that. That is a terrible idea. You will lose credibility. People won't want to hire you." And it was the one time I outright ignored something my business coach told me. And I went ahead and did it anyway. And I was a little nervous. I was like, okay, so are people not going to hire me? Am I going to find that this has a negative impact on my business? And that's not what happened at all. And in fact, I know people have hired me because I will be open about mental health, because a lot of individuals are struggling with it. And if they're looking for, a career coach, that's what I do. If they're looking for a career coach to work with and they themselves are in a position where they're struggling with their mental health, oftentimes like they would rather go to someone where they know it's okay to talk about that, where they don't feel like I have to hide this part of myself and show no weakness, for people to get a good job, or for people to think that I'm professional, or to get a promotion, or to start to run my business well, whatever their objective is with seeking out coaching.
Hey, this is Nick Armstrong, and you are listening to the Founded in FoCo podcast. Every episode, we get a chance to talk to innovative movers and shakers in our community. And today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with Chrysta, who's a member of our organizing team for Founded in FoCo and also a presenter. Chrysta, tell us about your business.
This is like the worst question to answer, and it is such a requirement as a business owner. Tell us about your business, right? So I'll give my best lame attempt at it as an introvert and someone who absolutely hates talking about myself and my business. So I am Chrysta Bairre, and I am a career coach, a speaker, and author of the book Beautiful Badass: How to Believe in Yourself Against the Odds. I'm also the founder of She Goes High, which is an introvert-friendly women's leadership community here in Northern Colorado.
And your talk focused specifically on mental health. Mm-hmm. And I imagine that imposter syndrome is kind of part of that as well, as we all suffer through that, especially looking at, we're just comparing each other's like Zoom backgrounds. And tell us about what we can look forward to as part of your talk.
So I have one session at Founded in FoCo this year, and it's mental health and entrepreneurship. And I just love talking about this. There's a lot more space to talk about mental health and mental wellness since COVID, which that's one thing that I do appreciate about this experience, is that there's a lot more opportunity to talk about mental health, because we all have mental health, all of us. And whether or not someone is an individual who lives with mental illness, some people do, some people don't. I personally believe that at some point in our life, we will all also experience a mental health crisis of some sort, whether that's through some kind of loss or grieving process that we're going through, something that happens to us, right? And so it's just really important to talk about mental health and mental wellness and how it shows up for us, as well as I will be getting into in my session mental illness, because it actually is much more prevalent amongst entrepreneurs than the general population. In fact, entrepreneurs are 50% more likely to report having a mental health condition. And so again, I think it's just so important to break down the stigma, to talk real talk about what this looks like for us, what mental health and mental illness look like for us as entrepreneurs, how it shows up, how we can be resourced, how we can have people to talk to about it so that it doesn't take us down, because we see that happen, and I don't want that for anyone. And so I'm like, hey, let's have conversations, let's talk about how this shows up, let's talk about what it looks like, so that we can know how we might navigate it a little bit better. And we can know it's okay to say, as an entrepreneur, like that's such a vulnerable thing, especially if you are the face of your business, to say, hey, I'm struggling. Like that's a super, super scary thing, because like the fear is, well, I'm going to lose credibility. People aren't going to respect me. They're going to think that I'm not a professional. But I have not found that to be true at all.
Well, weakness is not a good marketing characteristic, right? And that idea of being the stalwart entrepreneur out there wrangling horses and problems and whatever else, right? The marble man has done immense damage to our culture, I believe. This is an issue that crops up across circles. And we've also seen from the Healthy Kids Colorado survey, 72% of genderqueer and non-binary high school students indicate that their stress level is not manageable most days. 70% are reporting that they purposefully harmed themselves without intent to die in the last 12 months. and the statistics just for the general population, not the genderqueer or the non-binary. If you look at just folks who identified as girls, folks who identified as boys, 55% of girls indicated their stress levels not manageable, 32% of boys. And so we have these alarming red flags going up across our community. And as you say, our adults are not well regulated. And in particular, our self-employed adults, which make up about 50% of our community, are not well regulated. So what is the baseline takeaway? What can we start doing in order to, like, would you solve mental health for us, please, on this podcast?
I wish I could, but we are going to talk about in my session, I am going to talk about what support systems and what resourcing can we get for ourselves, and how do we know when it's time to reach out to support and resourcing? People who live with mental illness, they already know, they've probably lived with it for some time. Maybe they have some idea, but it's also amazing how easily it can sneak up on you and you don't even realize it's happening. But even for people who don't live with mental illness, to talk about, like, when are the times that you need to be paying attention and what kind of resourcing can you get? So we're going to be talking about that and what that looks like in the session, as well as, like, being regulated. I mean, that's such a great way to put it, because I think the old school mental health kind of conversation really focused around therapy. And that is one aspect that I personally believe very strongly can be supportive to people. But there's other aspects as well. And sometimes just tips for nervous system regulation or emotional regulation can make a huge difference, as well as getting connected into our communities and not being isolated, not isolating, particularly when we're going through a difficult time that is going to impact our mental health. I mean, the tendency is to isolate during those times and to think, well, I'll go back out there once I'm feeling a little bit better. But oftentimes, if we connect into our communities when we first start to struggle, or when those stress levels become unmanageable, like you were talking about in those statistics, I think that's the point that we can really make a huge difference for ourselves and model for the people around us. Like a lot of the statistics you shared related to youth. And to hear those statistics and to think, like, wow, that is such a big impact. And what can I do for my kids? And, or for someone who is the leader of a team, if you have employees that work under you, or you're a business owner and you have a staff, what can I do for my staff? And my answer to that question is always manage your own mental health first. There are other supportive things you can do for other people, but if you're not managing your mental health for yourself, and you are leading a team, or you are a parent to kids, the thing is like, no matter what you say to them, they're not going to feel like they really have permission to do those things for themselves unless you are doing it for yourself first. If they're looking to you to see what's the standard, how do I behave, what's appropriate, you can say all you want, hey, I want you to pay attention to your mental health, but if you're not doing it for yourself, then I think that message really falls flat. So, really resourcing ourselves is such an important first step.
On an early episode of the podcast, we talked with Cindy Skalicki, and she said something very similar about the idea of executive presence is modeling the behavior that you wanted to see in other folks, and setting the stage for folks to take permission to lead in their own way, to show up and be authentic. And it, you and I had a start at Cohere. And we had that community around us when we were freelancing early on in our businesses. There are, many co-working places around. Now you run a meetup group, She Leads. Tell me about how your presence shows up in that group and what you're hearing from your entrepreneurs there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we changed our name from She Leads to She Goes High a couple of years ago. So if you knew us way back when, you may be familiar with the name She Leads, but we are She Goes High now. And that's really a huge part of the reason I started this group, was because I, as an entrepreneur, when I started my business, was really looking for connection and community. And there's so many networking groups out there that offer so much value and support to businesses. But so much of the time, if you happen to be an introvert like me, you may have noticed that a lot of those networking groups really are designed with extroverted preferences in mind. So it can really be quite difficult to engage and get involved in those. Like, it can be done, but if you're an introvert, you have to work like 20 times harder than everyone else in the room just to be present and to get anything out of that. And so I just kept thinking to myself, like, where can I go to connect with people where maybe there isn't quite so much pressure to perform as if I am more extroverted than I truly am? And where can I go where I don't have to feel like I have to be on as a business owner all the time? Because that entrepreneur hat, I love to wear it, but it gets real exhausting when I am wearing it 24/7. And when things are difficult, when there are challenges, when those inevitable business ups and downs happen, it was really just like, where do I go to talk about this, where people aren't going to just look at me weird, like, what do you mean you're going to come out and say that you've been having a rough couple of months in your business and things aren't going well? At traditional networking, I think there's so much of a pressure to really show up as this idealized version of ourselves in our business. And so because I couldn't really find the kind of connection and community that I wanted, I created it with She Goes High. I just said, hey, let's bring together a group that, first of all, introverts and extroverts are welcome and everyone in between, but we design our events with introverted preferences in mind, which just means that if you happen to be introverted, maybe you're not going to have to work so hard to show up and feel comfortable and feel engaged. And in addition to that, it's a community where there's really no need to be performative in any way. And there's no perfectionism required in order to show up. I mean, it's just all about being authentic, showing up as you are today, whether you're having an amazing day, you just closed a big deal, or, maybe you cried in the car or the bathroom, or as one person said at She Goes High one time, she said, I cried in line earlier today getting a bagel. I don't know why. They just asked me what I wanted. And all of a sudden I felt overwhelmed and a tear leaked out. And, we all had a good laugh about it, because I think, especially as business owners, most of us can relate to that feeling of sometimes you just get overwhelmed with all the different hats you're wearing, all the different things that you have on your plate. And sometimes it just catches up to you when you don't even realize it.
The idea of giving yourself space and permission to network in that way, something that's uncommon, and I think is something we need to see more in the community. You've helped us lead the Brain Crawl event at Founded in FoCo alongside Ariana Freelander, and now we've got Ben Clark helping as well with this effort. Tell us about some of the resources that are made available in the community through that event and how that functions. And it strikes me as really similar in that same vein of, like, you can just sort of like go up and talk to people about things that you might not be comfortable talking about at a business type seminar.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have the Brain Crawl, which is a mental health and brain health resource fair. So it's a drop-in style. You just like pop in and talk to our different table hosts that we have. And basically what we're doing is we're bringing in resources from our community that support brain health and mental health. And they're going to be there, first of all, so that you might have a business card or know where to go if you are needing some support. And also there's going to be people at their tables who will talk openly with you about what's going on and about their own journey. And again, it's just through having those conversations, or even just the opportunity to have those conversations, that we can start to normalize that as human beings who also happen to be business owners, that it's okay to be a human being still, even as a business owner or as a leader. We don't have to try to be perfect or be something that we are not in order to be successful in business. Like, I just absolutely, don't agree that we have to try to be something that we're not to be successful. And so I just love that the Brain Crawl gives an opportunity for that conversation, as well as says, here's resources. Because when you work for someone else, when you have a traditional job, you often have like an HR department maybe that you can go to if you need something, or you have group health insurance, and maybe you have some additional resourcing and support through your employer for, like, when you happen to be having a difficult time and you need a little bit of help, that kind of a thing. Well, you don't have that when you're an entrepreneur. You're just on your own. And a lot of us aren't even on group health insurance, right? So if you're thinking about, like, I need to be resourced, and maybe you want to pursue therapy, for example, or some kind of counseling, We don't even know where to start in that search. I mean, if you're already in some kind of mental health crisis that you might need that, it can feel really overwhelming to even just do the search and find out the information. So the brain crawl, we're just saying, like, we're going to have a lot of these people in the room. We're going to be talking to you about, like, here's where these resources exist, from government resources to different nonprofit organizations we have to individual businesses. And so we just want people to be really, really well resourced through the brain crawl.
Yeah, and if you're a freelancer and you're not feeling like you're part of a connected community yet, Founded in FoCo is a great place to go for this. That's exactly the reason that we are so thankful that you are stepping up to lead the effort and speaking out on the mental health aspect of it. I believe we have another panel from the Alliance for Suicide Prevention talking about what freelancers and small business owners can do to help start some of those, facilitate those conversations, set the stage so that those conversations aren't as back room, behind the scenes. They need to be happening up front, and it's okay to not be okay in your business. And I think Fort Collins is a good place to have that level of honesty as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I found that here. I mean, when I first started my business, I actually was invited to speak at a mental health event. And my business coach at the time was like, what? Do not do that. That is a terrible idea. You will lose credibility. People won't want to hire you. And it was the one time I outright ignored something my business coach told me. And I went ahead and did it anyway. And I was a little nervous. I was like, okay, so are people not going to hire me? Am I going to find that this has a negative impact on my business? And that's not what happened at all. And in fact, I know people have hired me because I will be open about mental health, because a lot of individuals are struggling with it. And if they're looking for, a career coach, that's what I do. If they're looking for a career coach to work with, and they themselves are in a position where they're struggling with their mental health, oftentimes, like, they would rather go to someone where they know it's okay to talk about that, where they don't feel like I have to hide this part of myself and show no weakness, for people to get a good job, or for people to think that I'm professional, or to get a promotion, or to start to run my business well, whatever their objective is with seeking out coaching. So, I think that conversation is so important. And I do want to speak to something else, which is that when I first started She Goes High, and I knew we were creating introvert friendly events and introvert friendly community, but what I didn't know at the time is that we also were creating neurodivergent friendly events and community. And it was interesting because I was noticing that we were getting a lot of neurodivergent people showing up at She Goes High. And I thought, okay, well, there must be some overlap between, what introverts really crave and desire, as well as, what works well for neurodivergence. And then I ended up finding out in the last 18 months that I myself am neurodivergent. And surprise. So, that's out there too. And I just want to speak to that because I think more and more people are really starting to recognize that their brains just work differently than other people's. And I think that you find a lot of us in entrepreneurship for the reason that we struggle in traditional work environments, because those environments just don't work for the way that our brains as a neurodivergent might process information. So sometimes I think we seek out employment on our own, self-employment, because it's like, oh, I can really structure this so that it works for me, rather than trying to structure me so that it works for someone else, right? And that's going to be another part of the conversation that we're having at the brain crawl as well, is, resources for neurodivergence and what that looks like. And in fact, we have a bunch of programming at Founded in FoCo around neurodivergence. And so I love to see that, because the more we can be self-aware, if you happen to be neurodivergent or you think you might be, as well as the more aware you can be around attracting talent and people who are neurodivergent, because there's a lot of really skilled and amazing people out there that just need a little patience or a few adaptations or something like that to do incredible work in the world. And I believe we all have the capacity to do incredible work in the world.
Spot on. And a resource in our own backyard, Temple Grandin. I mean, that's the neurodivergent essence right in her summary, that everyone has a job that they can do and is best at, even if they've been told, oh, you can't possibly do that, you can't do these, you're not well suited, or whatever that means. Like, there are ways to adapt it. And it's really cool that we're able to serve as a stage and a platform for that through your work and others, and I'm deeply grateful for that. So thank you, Chrysta.
Yeah.
So tell us about where we can find you and your business.
Absolutely. So the best place to find all things Chrysta is at my website, Live, Love, Work, and the URL is liveandlovework.com. You can find information about She Goes High. You can find information about my book, my speaking, my coaching, all of those different things. You can also find me on the socials. Just Google my name and look me up, connect with me, LinkedIn and Facebook and all of those different places, because I definitely want to connect with other people and create more and more space to have conversations about real talk about entrepreneurship, right? That's not just the pretty face that we can all put up on social media, but the realness behind it and the just like the truth of being human. Like, we are not just business owners, we are human beings.
Well said. Chrysta, thank you so much for joining me. And for more amazing tidbits like this, join us at Founded in FoCo March 1st through 3rd in person. And on our website, we have tons and tons and tons of recorded content, from panels to podcasts like this one. So there's always something to learn and someone to learn from in our community that you can connect with. So hope to see you next time. Hey, thanks for listening. I'm Nick Armstrong, and this is a Founded in FoCo podcast. For more great interviews like this one, join us at foundedinfoco.com.